We spend so much of our lives lugging around all this emotional and physical baggage, just in case something goes wrong. But what if there was actually a simple, totally logical rule to help us figure out when to panic and when to just relax? Welcome to This Explainer. Today we're unpacking a really brilliant mental framework for managing risk. It's inspired by a simple conversation between a mother and daughter, and it perfectly illustrates how to handle life's sudden curveballs. So let's jump right into a high-stress scenario I think we can all absolutely relate to. Picture this. You're right in the middle of a crucial exam. The clock is ticking down, you're writing furiously, and suddenly, bam, your ink runs dry. The pen is dead. Do you freeze in terror? Do your palms start sweating instantly? Or do you figure out a fix on the spot? Well, this exact scenario happened to a student named Vimal, and the way he handled it, that's what sparked this entire discussion we're breaking down today. Now, the source text shows us a really stark contrast between two friends. First up, we've got Sumi. She represents, well, how most of us would probably feel in a crisis. She straight up admits that if her pen died during the test, she would have panicked. Honestly, she was alarmed just hearing the story. On the flip side, though, we have Vimal. When his pen died, the guy didn't miss a beat. He stayed incredibly cool, raised his hand, and just calmly asked the teacher for a spare. The teacher reached over, grabbed an extra pen from Sumi, actually, and handed it to him. Boom, crisis averted, 0 elevated heart rates. But here's the thing. Vimal's super chill reaction wasn't just blind luck, and it wasn't some magical lack of anxiety. He actually had a specific rationale. When Sumi asked him later, why didn't you panic, he laid out his logic. He knew that a bunch of his friends in that room, including Sumi, carry extra pens. So he correctly calculated that his environment was practically overflowing with the exact resource he needed. Since he knew they'd lend him one anyway, he just asked himself, why bother carrying a spare? He literally outsourced his risk to his environment.
Part 1. The calculus of contingency. Defining the rule of resources and risk.
So, Sumi's mother, we'll call her Mama, like in the text, hears this story and realizes Vimal's approach isn't just cool, it's highly calculated. She introduces this awesome concept called the calculus of contingency. And the absolute golden rule here is this. You should only bear the burden of carrying a spare if you know a resource is scarce or if it's completely impossible to recreate on the spot. Sumi tried to argue, right? She said, well, if people decided not to lend him a pen, he'd be in huge trouble, meaning he definitely should have carried a backup. But Mama points out the massive flaw in that kind of overly cautious thinking. You don't need a backup for every single thing in life. You only need one when the environment can't easily provide the resource. Vimal looked around his classroom, realized extra pens were everywhere, and naturally just applied this calculus.
Part 2. The road trip rule. Testing the framework in everyday life.
To see if this theory holds up out in the real world, Mema tests it with a scenario packing a bit more horsepower, the classic family road trip. Seriously, think about it for a second. We only fill our car's gas tank with enough fuel to go a certain distance, right? We aren't packing 5 extra jerry cans of gasoline in the trunk, and yet we almost never panic about running empty on the long highway drive. Why is that? Well, Sumi hits the nail on the head. It's because we know for a fact there'll be plenty of fuel pumps down the road. And that right there brilliantly illustrates Mama's whole calculus. We fully trust that fuel pumps will be constantly available ahead of us, so we don't turn our cars into mobile gas stations. But a flat tire, that can happen literally anywhere. Any random stretch of road, usually when you're out in the absolute middle of nowhere with 0 mechanics in sight. The resource suddenly vanishes, and there's no way we can magically build a new tire, which is exactly why we always carry a spare. We only pack the backup when the chance of a sudden disaster collides with a total lack of resources.
Part 3. The Nespresso exception. When personal preferences clash with logic. Now, any solid framework really needs to survive a stress test against our own quirky habits. Because, let's be real, we are definitely not always perfectly rational creatures. Sumi very cleverly challenges Mama's logic by flipping it right back on her. She calls out her mom's notorious habit of dragging her heavy Nespresso machine absolutely everywhere they travel. By Mama's own logic, coffee is pretty much universally available. So Sumi drops the ultimate gotcha question. If you only need a spare when resources are scarce, why on earth do you carry your Nespresso everywhere? Mama defends her habit by explaining that for her daily routine, she just really needs that specific cup of comfort. And hey, we all know how intense coffee lovers can be. But she actually proves that she still strictly follows the calculus. She points out that when they took a trip to Italy, she totally left the machine at home. Why? Because she knew top-tier, excellent coffee would be available in literally every street corner shop. So even with her absolute favorite, highly specific comfort item, she still assessed the environment first. In a nation of coffee experts, the availability was 100%, so the spare stayed home.
Looking at all these scenarios side by side just perfectly sums up everyday risk management. Pens, available from friends, so no spare needed. Gas, available at pumps all along the highway, no spare needed. A flat tire, no help around, so you absolutely carry a spare. Nespresso in Italy, corner shops have you covered, so no spare needed. It all boils down to this. We only need to secure a backup, and that includes physical items or just emotional anxiety when the availability of what we need drops to zero.
Part 4. The power of staying cool. Why this mindset matters.
Let's bring this all back to why this framework is a real game changer for your daily decision-making, way beyond just packing a suitcase or sitting in a classroom. Mama highlights the hidden danger of Sumi's anxiety-driven worldview. Think about it. If Vimal had panicked, he would have messed up the exam regardless. Panicking doesn't magically manifest a pen. It just clouds your judgment, spikes your adrenaline, and pretty much guarantees a ruined test. Because Vimal applied the calculus and realized the resource was right there, he stayed cool. And like Mama so wisely notes, it's only when you stay cool that solutions can actually present themselves.
So, if you want to navigate a sudden crisis without lugging around all that unnecessary emotional or physical baggage, just follow this really simple, logical sequence straight from Vimal's playbook. Step 1, assess the availability of the resource. Take a look around. Is what you need actually scarce, or is it literally right next to you? Step 2, stay cool under pressure. Don't let the alarm bells take over your brain. And step 3, reach out for support and solutions. Just like Vimal asking the teacher, sometimes the ultimate fix is just asking your environment for a little help.
As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a final thought. We've seen how carrying a spare is only really necessary when resources are genuinely scarce. So take a look at your own life, your projects, your daily worries. What unnecessary spares, those extra anxieties, obsessive backup plans, and heavy burdens are you carrying around right now that are actually just weighing you down? Trust the calculus, drop the unnecessary baggage. You might just find it a whole lot easier to stay cool.